Greetings and welcome to Start a Conversation. My name is Dr. Shani Byard from Message Media Education. We're a professional development training company that uses Afro media literacy to walk people from all backgrounds through the process of analyzing how media impacts the perception that they have of themselves and of others. And then we learn how to counter that. Today we're going to talk about racism, and I want to introduce you to my guests. Give us a little background on yourself, both how you identify and then also talk about your upbringing a little bit.
I was born in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, East Africa, 1975. Grew up there until I was about 20. My childhood was relatively pretty normal. I was brought into a working class family, two professionals. I went to school, did my education, was taught English somewhat early, as most people who lived in the city did.
Awesome. And then how do you identify?
I am African, I am black, I am a citizen of the world, I am a man.
Great. Thank you. And next is Joanne Poplar.
I was born in the UK. Unlike my brother to my left, I'm not going to reveal what year that was prior to 1975, let's just say that. But yeah, my parents are from the Caribbean, from Barbados. They moved there back in the 1960s. And my dad would always share stories of what it was like to move as an immigrant to the motherland. Barbados was colonized by the UK until independence. But he would say, he would walk around looking for somewhere to live, even though he'd been invited to the country, and he'd see signs that would say, no cats, no dogs, no blacks, no Irish. And he really instilled in me, you are a global citizen, go wherever you want, but recognize that you may not always be welcome, even with an invitation. So, my parents really instilled in me that, go, be free, but recognize that there may be issues with your blackness regardless of where you go.
And how do you identify?
I identify as Black British.
Okay. All right. And last but not least, we have William King.
I come from a family of settlers, African Americans that migrated back to Africa in the 1800s to settle in Liberia. Part of the founders, the first president was my great-grandfather on my grandmother's side.
Wow.
And then later on down the line with the presidency and so forth, I had three other grandfathers who were presidents in Liberia. It was an interesting place, interesting story. Actually, African Americans left the U.S. because they felt, there was a group that felt strongly that the kind of equality that they wanted to achieve and what they wanted to do, that they would not get it here. And so they went back to Liberia. Lived in Liberia, had a very great life in Liberia. It was pretty good, a lot of good schools, a lot of servants, a lot of, winding down with a lot of dignitaries. And then at the same time, very rewarding. My grandfather, on my mom's side, he started his own taxi company, and that's how he grew into one of the biggest transportation company in West Africa, like Liberia. My dad was a banker, he had his own bank. So things were pretty good, and then there was a civil unrest in 1980, and then there was another one in 1990, and then I left, went to Senegal. So did about 5 years in Senegal, and then we transitioned to the US. I identify myself as African American, or in a bigger sense, Black.
Looking at the roots of institutional racism and how it's kind of manifested throughout the years, I want us to kind of look at how we've experienced being labeled, being stereotyped, having certain labels being imposed on us due to racism. globally. I wanted to find out from you guys, have you been racially profiled essentially have you experienced stereotypes in your communities or professional environments? And if so, what's happened? What does that look like?
Hearing William talk about his background and my background, there's some interesting similarities about, well, starting from the fact that Ethiopia and Liberia were the two countries that have never been colonized in Africa. So that's a pretty interesting jump-off point, because a lot of that experience that stems from colonization, so to speak, never really, we never really got to experience firsthand, or the ramifications of that over a course of time. So you grew up hearing of all the failed attempts, other powers to colonize, our nation, and how strong and amazing we were, and that we were people, that were fighters.
Right.
And so that I don't know, character kind of builds character over a course period of time. So it becomes much harder to break you down as you grow up, because now you have a pretty interesting and strong base to work off of. So as I sort of started growing up, and now this is where the media kind of plays in, and then got to see how the rest of the world, though, and its perception, how others perceive you. You remember the 1984 famine that Ethiopia experienced, and that became a label sort of that stuck with our people wherever we move to this day. I still hear about it. It's very difficult for me to really be affected and be broken down by anything that's thrown at me, because I think, again, the base and the foundation was very strong from the beginning. I feel like even if that perception was thrown at me a certain way, I always had the tools, I think, just psychologically, and I don't know exactly, to be honest with you, just the inner strength to be able to navigate through that.
Can you share an example?
And where are you from? I'm from Ethiopia. Wow, how are things over there? Are you guys okay? Yeah, we're absolutely great, actually. You know what? Let me tell you a little bit about what my country is and how my people are. So we start the conversation.
Yeah.
So not necessarily being, pissed off and walking away, but you don't know if you haven't traveled, if you haven't seen, if nobody's told you, then you don't know. So it's my responsibility to educate you and bring you up to speed.
I have to say, I actually have a very different experience growing up in the UK. Barbados was colonized. It was a former British colony. And, as I mentioned, my parents were invited over. There was a wave of people from the Caribbean who were invited to work on public transport, to work in the National Health Service, to work in tea shops, on the railways, or different kind of things. And my parents are strong. Even today, they're in their 70s, and they are some of the strongest people that I know. Hearing those stories of how they were treated when they were invited into a country, it's not like they just picked up themselves and says, I'm just going to go kick it in the UK for a little while. They were invited, and to hear that, my dad's an engineer by trade, incredibly intelligent man. He worked on the buses, and in the UK, the old style buses, they're 2 floors, double-decker, and you would kind of get onto the bus from the back, and you'd actually get a ticket from the bus conductor. And my dad has retold so many stories of being spat on as he went to give someone a ticket. Wow. Being kicked, being slapped, all kinds of things. And he's like, but it's okay, because we were able to provide a better life for you and your sisters. And even though they walked all of us through our education, through school, I was bullied at school. I was one of, we moved to a nicer area, with better schools, better amenities, parks, and all of those kind of things. But I was one of only 10 black kids in my school year, and it was a really large school. And kids would pull my hair, or they'd kind of make fun of how my parents would speak because they still had their West Indian accent, and I always felt different. And I honestly have to say, it wasn't until I moved to the US that I really felt that I could break out of those shackles in some ways, because I kind of looked like there were more people like me in the newsroom or anywhere that I went. I didn't feel quite so alone in it all. And I'm grateful for a passport and to have a family that travels. You know, we're global people, so it wasn't a thing to move. But I do often feel concerned about if I'd stayed in the UK, living within those kind of institutionally racist confines, what kind of person I would be. It does something to the spirit, you know. And then to see those images, even though I work in the media, to see those images reinforced in the media,
Correct.
even when you know you're trying to do your part to change those stereotypes, is tough.
I want to go into something that has I've been dying to talk about, and that is the experience between those who identify as Black but are not from this country, and then those who are Black from this country. Through my experience, we have different perceptions of each other. We have different experiences that we bring to the table. Sometimes we have a perception that we don't like one another, that there's no unity between one another. And so I just wanted to kind of put it out on the table and see what your experience has been like with us Black folks who are born and raised here.
Conversations that I've had with Black Americans, though, folks here often think that I've had an easier ride because I'm from Europe. It's like, oh, well, you know, Black people don't suffer from racism in the UK. And then, you know, it's all about educating people. And I have to have a conversation about, you know, what happened to my parents, what I went through at school, what I went through until, you know, even until I actually moved to the United States. These things do happen. It's just that when it happens overseas, it just has a different accent. That's all. And people think I'm smart too because I have a British accent.
Right.
I really work that angle. Not as smart as I sound at all.
What about you guys in terms of the differences and experience? I mean, are there benefits to being not from here when interacting with African Americans?
Where I grew up in Ethiopia, I mean, at a very young age, I think back at the music my parents were listening to, the Motown sound, the Muhammad Ali boxing videos that my dad had, and he would play that over and over again and say, watch how he moves. It was really amazing how much enriched I was in that culture already. By the time I got here, nothing was new to me. I knew the sports culture, I knew the music, art, cinema, the civil rights movement. My dad would talk about the speeches about Dr. King, Malcolm X. We knew. I knew. You know what the Black experience was. Maybe not necessarily as much in detail, but I felt like I had a pretty good handle on it. So for me, come here and blending in was not very difficult. I felt like I knew the people that I was running into.
Interesting, because it really depends with the, I guess I can say the social status or social class of the African person that I'm actually interacting with, truthfully, because I've interacted, or I have some African friends who, when they migrated over here, they're trying to really make something out of their life. I mean, they're really coming from nothing. So their neighborhoods that they actually go to live in are really socially disadvantaged neighborhood. And although they see this as a huge opportunity, as a huge stepping stone, working security, working at the parking lot, I mean, they're really like, hey, you know what? I can do this for a while, 5 years, then I'm moving on to the next one. This is such a great opportunity because I'm coming from where I didn't have anything. So they're so grateful for that. And so there's a mental blockage that in conversations with Africans, they're like, man, my African American brothers, we're different. They don't understand all this opportunity that are placed in
Right.
front of them. Why is it that they're not taking advantage of all this opportunity? And I think I would definitely have sided with them, but because I grew up in a home with an African American dad, and I've been very intimate, have known to be very intimate of the different challenges and the institutionalized racism and the detrimental effects. And so, but some Africans at that level, they may not have been educated to the point where they fully understand that. And they don't understand that for the African American, it's very overwhelming that you've put in 400, 500 years and you still at the same disappointing position.
Yeah.
Sometimes in our conversation, I see that there's a gap between the both of us because they're going to get opportunities. The African that comes, he's going to get opportunity because he's been viewed or their perception is that, hey, he'll work harder than the African American person.
Right.
He won't put up much of a resistance. And on their end, some stuff proves true because you have a vision. Your vision is not to be a security guard forever. So you're just trying to clock in as many hours as you can possibly get. And your boss is really happy with that. So there's been that stream.
But I think it was actually the Rodney King video
Yeah.
and the riots that followed afterwards that really opened up everybody's eyes as to this is the plight of the African American.
That for me is my truth.
Yeah.
That I am fortunate enough to be free. I'm fortunate enough to be a woman who can travel the world.
Know who you are, know where you come from. And the story has been so much ingrained in our mind.
Start a conversation.
Start a conversation.
Start the conversation.